Generations have gathered in this great space. They have passed by the millions on their way to work or play or to celebrate the events of the day. Now they gather to celebrate Grand Central itself. There are many stories in the history of Grand Central. There were those who built it, used it, loved it, and fought to save it. There are also those who worked with their sweat and hands to give it new life. They have their own story.
It has been my great privilege to oversee the restoration and revitalization of this fantastic landmark. First, I would like to thank Steve Summer of LMB, who are even making things right this morning.
The biggest challenge clearly on Grand Central Terminal was achieving just under $200 million worth of construction inside an occupied building where you have approximately 500,000 people walking through your job site 20 hours a day. I am a Metro-North Railroad commuter, and I know the station, which was a tremendous advantage for me. I do enjoy walking through Grand Central Terminal, either coming into my office or leaving at the end of the day. And I'm always curious when I hear the general public talking about the project.
Oh, I think it's gorgeous.
Wonderful.
It makes me proud to be a New Yorker.
Grand Central Terminal went through the First and Second World War. In the Second World War, the terminal went through a tremendous change. Most of the bronze components on all of the windows, especially at the ticket offices, were removed for the war effort. All of the very high windows were in fact painted black. And it brought a very dark, dingy environment. One of the things that we did was remove a large portion of these black painted glass panes and bring some natural light back into Grand Central Terminal. Larry McGovern-Bovis was specifically qualified for the restoration of Grand Central Terminal because we are actually one of the only large construction managers that have a center of expertise in restoration. We have vast experience from the restoration of Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island.
We are the first major construction manager to establish a division dedicated to preservation projects. First of all, without preservation in New York City, it would be a very sterile society if we were allowed to just tear down buildings randomly. And I think Grand Central is a perfect example of that. One of the things we did was initiate a probe program, and we developed a series of probes throughout the terminal where we checked the steel to check the weldability of it. We checked some of the strengths of the concrete throughout the terminal. We removed some panels in order to check the actual condition of the original historic materials that were hidden behind them in order to understand what had to be done when the terminal was restored.
Most visual aspects of this project was the cleaning of the sky ceiling, which is right behind us. It's a 25,000 square foot mural that was cleaned using a special mix that is similar to what was used to clean the Sistine Chapel, and it was only cleaned. The ceiling was not repainted. Most people were very surprised at that because the ceiling before was so dirty that you could not even see the constellation design that you see now.
Having served my apprenticeship as a church decorator in Glasgow, Scotland, and being very much aware of the atmosphere within a church, I can say there was a likewise atmosphere once you were up at that height, and you definitely were in one of the so-called cathedrals of the 20th century.
We have had a good working relationship with Larry McGovern Bovis from the beginning. They have come up with some very clever engineering solutions to some of the elements of this project that were very problematic, probably the most noteworthy of which was the cleaning and restoration of the sky ceiling. They had a novel solution to that, and they did it without interrupting the flow of traffic across this main concourse.
Due to the limited structural capacity of the existing roof steel, we could not accommodate a hanging scaffold to access the ceiling, and we worked with a scaffolding contractor that has worked with us previously on the Statue of Liberty, and we actually constructed a freestanding overhead gantry movable scaffold inside the hall of Grand Central that was self-supported off the floor. It was not hung from the ceiling. It did not touch the ceiling at all. And it allowed us to gain access to the ceiling. It allowed us to do the cleaning of the ceiling as well as the extensive work in the attic simultaneously. The Grand Central Terminal was consistently changing. We had Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. And typically Plan A, B, and C did not work because of numerous unforeseen conditions. So we always had Plan D in our back pocket. The scaffold that we designed was on a series of rollers, right? And this would have the capability to roll the entire 285 feet from the east side of the terminal to the west side of the terminal. And if you're moving such a very large piece of equipment, you need to be absolutely assured that you are moving it exactly perpendicular to the tracks. And we moved about 6 or 7 inches of the 285 feet, and we were already out of square. And we found out that nobody was talking to each other. So what we did is we put a radio in the man's hand on the north side and a radio in the man's hand on the south side, and we put a radio in the man in the middle. And he started going stroke, stroke, stroke. And once we started that, the entire truss moved without a catch, moved the entire 285 feet in about 1.5 hours. And during those hours when Grand Central is closed, the acoustics inside Grand Central are absolutely phenomenal. And when you have 1 or 2 people counting a cadence during the moving operation, and when you hear it inside Grand Central at 2:15 or at 2:45 or 2:15 a.m. in the middle of New York, it is truly exhilarating.
If you've been to Rome, you have seen the great classical gateways, the gateways that were the entry to the city, that celebrated your entry into the city. And they were deliberately designed to have a certain magnificence of scale to welcome you and make you feel you'd arrived at a civilized place. If you look at the south elevation of Grand Central, you'll see 3 arches, 3 wonderfully arched windows enframed in double columns each side of the arches. And that was Whitney Warren's, if you will, signature that Grand Central was to be the gateway into the new modern city. He succeeded incredibly well.
There is still a tremendous talent of craftsmen that are available in the world today that can achieve a completely magnificent product.